Just 7 UFC fights deep into his promotional run, and it has already become perfectly clear that Justin Gaethje's legacy is set in stone to some extent. Now, perhaps the most important portion of his career is yet to come, but if we're speaking purely about his placement as one of the most exciting fighters in UFC history, the highlight is undoubtedly going to be one of the first names on anyone's list. A force of pure attrition who just seems to be improving with each passing fight, Gaethje's mixed martial arts career has been an unmissable spectacle. He's an old-style, blood-and-guts brawler who has been leveled up for the sport's newer era. His career is a story of two halves, the second of which we are now in the earliest days of. It's a story of a fighter who we had to at least some extent written off, or at the very least underestimated, pigeonholed, placed in a box that was too small for his clear potential. Justin Gaethje is something of a dream come true for MMA fans. He encompasses both the old and the new with a level of flair and fluidity that just doesn't make sense given his approach. He's Diego Sanchez beating his chest as he walks down Gilbert Melendez. He's Max Holloway calling on Ricardo Lamas to slug it out in the final 10 seconds of a bout that he already knew he had won. Gaethje takes that ferocity, takes those moments that remind us why we love this sport, and somehow managed to build his entire fighting style around it, refining that approach with each passing walk to the octagon. With that in mind, ahead of Justin's massive showdown against Khabib Nurmagomedov for the lightweight title at UFC 254, we're going to take a look at 5 of Gaethje's most impressive finishes up until this point, and attempt to paint a vivid picture of the third challenger to the unbeaten champion at the top of the sport's most stacked division. Number 5. Brian Foster. Leg kick TKOs are something of a rarity at the highest levels of mixed martial arts, usually reserved for those who build their game around the technique. During his run as World Series of Fighting lightweight champion, Gaethje managed to single himself out to an even greater extent by scoring a rare first-round leg kick TKO against Brian Foster to defend his title. As you would expect, the bout was pretty wild for all of its 1 minute and 46-second duration. I really cannot understate it how impressive it is to finish your opponent through leg kicks in under 2 minutes. We've all seen Gaethje's leg kicking techniques working at the highest level, but seeing this tour de force in attacking the base only serves to prove that Justin is among the greatest leg kickers the sport has ever known. It's the angles he manages to create in there, mixing in leg kicks to finish off his wild combinations, catching his opponent completely unawares. In just 2 minutes, the challenger Foster was unable to stand, and Gaethje was left with a rare finish by leg kick TKO. Phenomenal work from the highlight, all things considered. Number 4. Luis Palomino. As the first of 2 epic clashes between Gaethje and the veteran Luis Palomino, this bout stood as a Fight of the Year contender for 2016 and in the eyes of many fans, as conclusive proof of Gaethje's merits as an elite lightweight talent. The amount of control Gaethje seems to possess whilst in the thick of a chaotic battle is pretty astounding at times. Palomino did give it as good as he got it, but there's a certain elegance to Gaethje's actions in a firefight that always seemed to carry him through to the end. This man has spent so much time swimming in the deep end that he almost starts to look more at home there than anywhere else. And when Palomino started to crack, Gaethje swarmed on him with a surprising degree of control over his shot selection. Those leg kicks once again were right at the center of what Gaethje was trying to do, and once he smelled blood, it was only a matter of time for Palomino before he became another feather in Gaethje's cap. Number 3. Michael Johnson. A star was well and truly born on the night Justin Gaethje made his first walk to the UFC octagon, taking on the veteran Michael Johnson. As a means of inserting the highlight directly into the lightweight top 10, this bout was absolutely perfect. And for a while, it did seem as though the fast hands of the menace would be the difference between the two. Those who had never watched a Gaethje fight were likely scoffing at this apparent hype job being taught a valuable lesson about the levels that exist in the sport as a whole. Those of us who knew what we were watching, however, were not quite as shocked when Gaethje managed to completely turn the fight's momentum on its head. Those leg kicks once again were the star of the show, but overall, it was that underdog energy that grabbed him an entirely new audience on that night. Everything from the dogged nature of the win and the eventual finish, to the failed attempt at backflipping off the side of the octagon in celebration. This was an underdog that everyone could get behind, a showman who prioritized violence above all other things. There was something so relatable about Gaethje in this matchup, and as you would expect, the fans understandably jumped on board immediately. Number 2. Edson Barboza. Matchup between 2 of the finest leg kickers in the sport, it's no wonder that the fans were so excited upon hearing about this bout's booking back in early 2019. Gaethje was in the middle of something of a renaissance at the time, finally appearing to be finding the balance between all-out dogfighting and a more measured and calculated approach. For most, his first-round knockout of James Vick was an important step towards re-establishing his footing in the UFC. It was the Barboza win, however, that truly saw the highlight making a point about his merits as an actual threat to the title. This more reserved Gaethje had all that ferocity bottled up inside him, behind a wall of calm and composure. His hands looked sharper, his motions more intentional and controlled, and above all other things, his punching power seemed to be a much greater factor in each exchange. Sitting down on his shots to an extent that we had not seen before, Gaethje managed to further carve out a reputation as a one-punch knockout artist, with a picture-perfect right hook within the opening 3 minutes. He hadn't fully emerged from the shadows of his back-to-back losses against Dustin Poirier and Eddie Alvarez just yet, but this was one serious statement about his intentions moving forward. Something was definitely changing in the approach of Justin Gaethje, and the world were slowly starting to take notice. Number 1. Tony Ferguson. And finally we come to the single greatest performance of Justin Gaethje's career. A win that should be held right amongst the best individual performances this sport has ever known. Tony Ferguson is a man who needs no introduction at this point in time. As something more akin to a Terminator than anything else, 12 straight opponents had cracked under El Cucui's legendary pace and pressure. It's a massive testament to the evolution of Justin Gaethje that he was able to do what he did to Ferguson on that night. I don't know that the brawling version of the highlight would have had the composure to play Tony's game the way he did, but from the opening round to the final shots landed, aside from a few excellent moments from Ferguson, namely a beautiful uppercut in the second round, it was well and truly the Gaethje show. Inhuman levels of endurance and toughness kept Ferguson alive, but in reality, Gaethje's shot selection and his powerful counters combined perfectly with his newfound heightened awareness of his own best path to victory. It was a masterful win against an all-time great who will no doubt go down in the history books alongside the man who thoroughly battered him over 5 rounds. And that'll just about do it for our look at the UFC's interim lightweight champion. With the biggest fight of his life and a spot opposite perhaps the most dominant athlete in the sport now ahead of him, the big question will now boil down to how far Gaethje can actually go. Nurmagomedov represents a different type of threat, a different breed altogether. He won't allow the electric pace and pressure of Gaethje to be a factor if things are going his way. That type of control is the kryptonite to Gaethje's own brand of offense. For me, it's a very difficult fight to call. We probably know each man's path to victory here, and while all this speculating is fun, thankfully we do not have to wait much longer until the answer becomes clear. Do let us know how you think Khabib vs Gaethje will play out over 5 rounds by leaving a comment below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. And as always, thank you for watching.